actions. So server actions are new to Next.js 14. So React server actions allow us to run asynchronous code directly on the server. So they eliminate the need to create API endpoints to mutate your data. Instead, we write asynchronous functions that execute on the server and can be invoked from our client or server components. Security is a top priority for web applications as they can be vulnerable to various threats. This is where server actions come in. So they offer an effective security solution, protecting against different types of attacks, securing your data, and ensuring authorized access. So server actions achieve this through techniques like post requests, encrypted closures, strict input checks, error message hashing, and host restriction, all working together to significantly enhance your web safety. So we're going to talk about now using forms with server actions. So in React, we can use the action attribute in the form element to invoke action will automatically receive the native form data. For an example, let me go ahead and give you an example here. Let's go back to our code editor, and I am here. I'm here going to create a comment. Actually, I'm going to paste this out. So here is a server component. As you can see here, we have a default function page. This is going to be an action. So it's going to async function, it's going to create, and it's going to take the form data that's going to come from the form itself. And it's a use server, so it's only going to run on the server. We have logic to mutate data, and then we are going to invoke the action using the action attribute. So form action create. Okay, let's go delete this one because we don't need it. We are going to create our own form in a bit. So an advantage of invoking server action within a server component is progressive enhancement. So forms work even if JavaScript is disabled on a client, right? So that's good. So server actions are also deeply integrated with Next.js caching. So when a form is submitted through a server action, not only can you use the action to mutate data, but you can also revalidate the associate cache using API like revalidatePath and revalidate tag. All right, so what we want to do is if we go back to here in this application, right? So we can search through the invoices that already exist in our database. We are looking into pagination search, everything works. Great. But this is the button. This is the component that we now want to be able to create a similar invoice like this, okay? So if you click on here, it should give us some sort of form where we will be able to add customer, email, amount, date, whatever information we want. So this creating invoice will have 6 steps. So number 1 is going to have, we're going to create a form to capture the user's input. Number 2, we're going to create a server action and invoke it from the form. Number 3, inside our server action, extract the data from the form data object. Number 4 is going to validate and prepare the data to be inserted into our database. Insert the data and handle any errors. And then finally revalidate the cache and redirect the user back to the invoice page. Okay, so inside our dashboard, our invoices route folder, let's go ahead and add a new route, and that's going to be a folder. And we're going to say create. And inside this create, we're going to have our page.tsx. So we are nesting the create route, nesting into invoices. So it's basically going to look like, so you're just going to go to dashboard, from dashboard /invoices/create, and then it's going to show here page.tsx. So we'll be using this route to create new invoices inside our page.tsx file. So let's go ahead and paste this example code, then spend some time actually looking over it. So I'm going to go ahead and paste this code right here and save it. Okay, this is a function, export default async function. This is a page, which is a create page. The first thing, we are creating a customer, a variable customers, and then we are awaiting fetch customers. So what is this happening? Let's go back to our data.ts where every fetch function is actually occurring. We are writing our SQL. So here we are getting the data. We are awaiting customer field where select ID name from customers, order by name, ascending order. Then customers is equal to data.rows, return customers, and we are handling any type of errors if that's happening. So this is just to fetch customers. We're fetching the customers. So, and also this is a server component in Next.js. Everything by default is a server component. And now you see that we are passing this customers as a prop to our form component. So obviously to save time, the form component is already created. So let's go here in our create form, and we'll see here's a regular form element, HTML element. We have a div. As you can see here, we have some label. We have HTML4 for customers. We have some select drop-down element with a list of customers. Some options here. It has an input. There you go. For the amount, that type of a number. Okay. Has two inputs elements of the status, which is, I think it's like a radio. There you go. That's one, and there's the other one. And then has one button with the type submit. So at the very end, we should see a button that has a type of submit. Okay. All right. So let's do this. Let's go back to our pages and save it. And let's go to our application, and now let's go to click on here. And that should go to this URL, as you can see here, localhost dashboard invoice and create. And this is our form. So we are creating here, we have a list of customers already. And then we have, so for the list of customers, we are fetching this from the database, by the way. And then we have our endpoint, a number type, and then we can actually check whether it's pending or paid. Okay, now let's go ahead and create a server action that is going to be called when the form is submitted. So we have to navigate, let's close this. So let's navigate to our lib directory and create a new file named action.ts. So we're going to go back to our lib folder right here, and we want to create a file, and that's just going to have our actions.ts. It's a TypeScript or JS file, okay? At the top of the file, because we only want to run this in a server, so we're going to say use server. That's all it is. Save it. Now, adding this use server, we mark all the exported functions within the file as a server functions. These server functions can then be imported into client and server components, making them extremely versatile. We can also write server actions directly inside server components by adding use server inside the action. But for this course, we'll keep them all organized in a separate file, okay? In our action.ts file, create a new async function. So let's go ahead and create that. So I'm going to say export async create invoices, which will take a form data. That's going to be type of form data. Okay, so what we're doing is we're exporting async create invoice. Actually, it's going to be just one particular invoice, so it's not plural. So create invoice. It's going to take form data, which is going to be a type of form data. Okay. Then in our form component, so let's go to our form component. That's our form component. Import the create invoice from your action.ts that we just created, right? So let's go ahead and save this. There you go. Export function create invoice. Cool. So in our form here, we are going to go ahead and import that. Not this. Create invoice. It's going to be from our lib actions. Now add an action attribute to the form element and call the create invoice again, which is already, I think, let's go back. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. So our form. So we're going to add an action attribute, which is I'm going to call the create invoice. Simple as this one. Okay, if you ever worked in PHP before, this is similar to how PHP does, but this is JavaScript. So form, we're going to add an action, and it's just going to call our create invoice function that we just created in our actions.ts. Simple as that. Now, good to know stuff. So in HTML, we would pass a URL to the action attribute. This URL would be the destination where our form data should be submitted, usually in the API endpoint. However, in React, the action attribute is considered a special prop. meaning React builds on top of it to allow actions to be invoked. Behind the scenes, server actions create a post API endpoint. This is why we don't need to create API endpoints manually when using server actions, making your life much more easier. Now, we have form data. Let's go ahead and extract those form data. Now, there are a couple of methods we can use. For this example, let's use the .getName method to get this. So here we are going to create raw form data is going to be an object, and we're going to get customer ID, which is going to be form data.get customer ID. We're going to get amount. We're going to say form data.get amount, and we're going to get the status form data.get status. Save this. We're going to test this out, so let's go ahead and print this raw form data. Also go back to the create form. As you can see here, form data is coming from data.get customer ID. So where is this customer ID? See that it's actually coming from the name itself. We are utilizing form, and it actually utilizes that name property customer ID. So you have to make sure that customer ID name matches this customer ID. And then we have name amount, right? And then we should have a status, name status. So that's how it should grab, okay? So one tip, if you're working with forms that have many fields, you may want to consider using entries method with JavaScript object.formEntries. Okay, object.formEntries is a function, JavaScript function. For an example, we can also do this. So instead of this get thing, if there's like a tons of inputs, right? We can also do const. I'm going to comment this out. In fact, let me write this and then I'll comment it out. So const, we can say raw form data, and let's comment this out for a second now, so it doesn't give me an error, which is going to be object dot from entries from data dot entries, like so. Okay, so you can use that one too if you have a lot of fields in your form, but for now we are just going to use form.data.get. So to check everything is connected correctly, go ahead and try it out. So the first person, let's do 299.00. Let's say it's going to be paid. Let's do that. And then we are going to create invoice. Nothing happened, but there we go. In our terminal, because you see that it is not a client component, that's why you cannot see it in your browser. But in your server component, as you can see here, customer ID, amount 299, and status paid. It did work. Okay. And I have an extension here. I can see it here as well. All right, so now that our data is in the shape of an object, it will be much easier to work with. So let's go ahead and validate and prepare the data. I'm going to go ahead and delete this. All right, so before sending any type of form data to our database, we always have to sanitize those data. We have to validate the data. We have to prepare the data so that our database doesn't get corrupted and also doesn't get affected, right, in any negative way. So we want to ensure it's in the correct format, right? So let's do this. We are going to go to our lib folder, and in our definitions.ts file, we are going to, so this is where it's coming from. So invoice, as you can see here, this is already created. If it's not, then we could create it. So So here we are exporting a type of invoice. So ID has to be a string, customer ID has to be a string, amount has to be a number, date has to be a string. All right. And then status, it could be, this is a union type, so it could be pending or paid. In TypeScript, it's called union. So it can hold either two values, right? Either pending or paid. And then we are also going to have a date that is string right here. Okay, so far we only have the customer ID, amount, and status from the form. It's important to validate the data from our form aligns with the expected types in our database. For instance, if we add console log inside our action, type of, let's take a look, let's do that again. So here we're gonna say just type of raw form data dot amount, and I know I can do dot because it's an object. There you go. So console log type of raw form data dot amount, and then let's go ahead, click on this one again, and now you see that it is amount is a type of string and not a number. This is because the input element with type number actually return a string, is not a number. To handle type validation, we have a few of options, right? While we can manually validate types using the type validation library, can save time and effort and everything, but here, and it's a very great library that I personally use, I like, is Zod, okay? So that's what we're going to use here as well. So you'll use Zod, a TypeScript first validation library that can simplify this task for us. So in our action.ts file, import Zod. So let's go and import this. So under this one, so I'm going to say Z from Zod. It looks like that it's already installed. Now here, with the help of Zod, we are just going to create a form schema. That's how Zod works. And it's going to be Z, so this is what we import, and it's going to be a format of object. So invoke the function and then pass the object we want. We are just going to say ID. ID is going to be Z dot string type, and that's a function as well, comma, and then we're going to have our customer ID, which is also going to be our Z dot string as well, and we'll have our amount. Now here on the amount, we will have Z dot, we're going to say course. So it's actually going to course to number. So whatever type it's throwing is going to take it and it's going to course that into a number type. Because as you know that our amount was coming as a string type, so it's now going to course that to a number type automatically for us. We're going to go ahead and do status, and it's actually going to have an enum type because it can be two types, pending or paid. And we're going to do call the function is going to take an array of what are the options. We have two options, pending or paid. And then we will have the date, Z dot string, like so. And we're going to save that. So that's our schema. It's similar to how we created our definition, as you can see here. These are manual types. So let's go ahead and create a type that's going to be create invoice. So this is the function create invoice, and this is just going to be the type of that. So I'm going to say form schema that we just created dot emit. So what's this going to take? As you can see here, it's also going to give you all the auto completion here. So I'm going to say ID has to be true, date true, like that. And then we're going to save this. Okay, so the amount field is specifically set to course change, like we talked about. We can now pass our raw form data to create invoice to validate the types. What we want to do here, we are going to create const, restructure it. We're going to get customer ID, amount, status is going to be from create invoice type dot parse, and that's going to be a function, that's going to be an object, and here we are going to pass all this, save, so we don't need the raw data anymore. Storing values in cents. It's usually good practice to store monetary values in cents in our database to eliminate JavaScript floating point errors and ensure greater accuracy. So let's convert the amount into cents. Go ahead and create a const amount cents is equal to amount times 100. Now finally, let's create a new date with the format year, month, and date. So for the invoice creation data, date, and that's going to be to ISO string. So like that, we're going to invoke that function, and then we're going to split this where it is t, and we'll just get the first. Okay. All right. So now that we have all the values we need for our database, we can create an SQL query to insert the new invoice into our database and pass the variable. So we are going to still be in this action. And now we are actually, because we are in server component, we can actually import our SQL from Vercel SDK that we installed. So that's going to be from Postgres. All right. So here, after all this done, this is an async function, so that's good. We are going to await, and then simply SQL is going to take template string, and here let's go ahead add the raw SQL we want to add. So we're going to say insert into, we are going to insert this into our invoices table. What we want to insert in customer underscore ID, amount, status, date, and then let's go ahead and do the value here. Values are going to be, there's going to be a variable of customer ID. We're going to have amount in cents for the amount, and for the status, we're going to have the status, and for the date, it's going to be the date. Let's save this. Right now, we are not handling any errors though, right? We are inserting this into our database, but we're not handling any errors. If something goes wrong, we have no way to know, we have no way to fix that. Okay, but we'll come back to it to fix the errors. Now, let's move on to the next step for this. Is going to be revalidate and redirect. Okay, so Next.js has a client-side router cache. Okay, so that stores the route segments in the user's browser for a time. Along with prefetching, this cache ensures that users can quickly navigate between routes while reducing the number of requests made to the server. Since we are updating the data displayed in the invoices route, we want to clear the cache and trigger a new request, right? So if we create this, we're still going to see, because the previous invoices were in cache. So we have to delete that cache, made it refetch, because we just added a new information to our database. Okay, we can do this with a function that Next.js provides us. It's called revalidatePath. So we are still in our actions file. We are going to now import, it's called revalidatePath from Next cache. Deals with Next cache. That's the package. And it's very easy to use. All we're going to do at the very end, we're just going to call this function revalidatePath, and we're going to provide the URL here, which is going to be, in our case, dashboard/invoices. Okay, so once the database has been updated, the dashboard/invoices route path will be revalidated and fresh data will be fetched from the server. So at this point, we also want to redirect the user back to the dashboard invoices page. So we can do this with the redirect function. So not only revalidate, we also want to reroute them. We don't want to just sit on that form, right? So if you take a look at this one. So once you create invoice, not only we want to revalidate the new invoice to show, but we want to reroute to the invoices and not on the create route, right? So we can just simply do that. Again, Next.js provide us another handy dandy function called redirect, and that's going to come from, make sure that it's coming from Next navigation and not from anywhere else. Save it, and then we are just going to simply do the same exact thing. Copy this, put this here, and save it. All right, congratulations. You have just implemented your first server action. Let's go ahead and test it out by adding a new invoice. If everything is working correctly, we should be redirected to dashboard invoice route on submission, and we should see the new invoice at the top of the table. So let's go ahead and do that. So we are going to let's do Amy Burns. So let's actually go ahead and, instead of like $2.99, let's do like $9.99 with some cents in there, like 89 cents or something, and then we're gonna do some paid And let's go ahead and create this. Nothing happens, so refresh the page. Let's see if our server, yeah, our server is running. Let's go ahead and do this one more time. In fact, let me see if that, so let me go back to our invoices here real quick. Oh, there you go. It did work, but it didn't reroute. Okay, I'm gonna try it one more time. So this time I'm gonna do Orban, Balas Orban. I'm sorry if I'm butchering the name. This is a real person that works in Virtual, by the way. So here I'm gonna do 11199. And let's do pending on this one. So it looks like it is inserting the data to our databases and revalidating the cache, but it's not redirecting me to invoice page. So if I click on here, oh, now it does. Okay, it was stuck for some reason, but okay, so we are, look at this. Orban, we have 111.99, February 29th is our date right now. And yeah, pending status, revalidate, redirect, everything's working.